Yes?
Yeah. You want me to call him?
No, it's okay. I'll email him and see if he wants to get on some week with us and just talk about it as well. Well, you could call him, I guess, if he picks up the phone, he wants to jump on, he could always do that. But it was just a thought this morning. Good guy and obviously experienced coach as well.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Great.
Well, Lou, I think you've met pretty well everybody. I've introduced them to you. And I looked at your bio. You were born the same day I was.
No.
And we have Daryl Belfry has just joined too. I don't know whether he's going to chime in, but it's good to have Daryl. We've got a couple of people that are on the cutting edge of the changing game today, and it's really good to see. But Lou, I was really impressed with your bio. When I was involved in the game, your name came up very often. And I wonder if you could introduce yourself, give us a bit of your background and experiences, and end up with what you're doing now, please.
Well, okay. I was born on your birthday, February 25th, 1945 in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up loving sports. My dad had played minor league baseball, professional baseball. I think he played in Montreal, in fact. And I think he played with Jackie Robinson. And because he knew him, we'd go to Ebbets Field when I was a kid, and he'd always talk to Robinson. And then we young kids under 8 were able to get on the field every Saturday morning with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And they did a clinic, how to bunt. You had Pee Wee Reese, whatever the subject matter was, then the whole team would come out and we'd practice it, and then we'd play catch with them. Then we'd get to see a game. And the whole deal was for 25 cents. And pretty good way to grow the game and grow a fan base, I think. And then anyway, we couldn't play ice hockey. We didn't have an ice rink, but we had plenty of schoolyards. So we played roller hockey, 4-wheel skates with a roll of electric tape. And from that, a couple of Hall of Famers, believe it or not, came out of that. The best of all, Joe Mullen. I remember Joey playing every single day roller hockey and practicing before he ever got on the ice. He didn't get on the ice till he was about 8 or 9. I used to pick him up and a bunch of kids at the old Madison Square Garden. Emil Francis, GM, vice president, coach of the Rangers, would send one of his assistants down with a bag of tokens. They were 15 cents, get on the subway, go out to Flushing, Queens, where they have that big tennis deal. And that was our first rink. It was horrible. You couldn't see. It was dark, but it was ice. And a lot of kids, good players came out of there. And it was just a matter of committing yourself to something you love. So it was too late for me, because when I was 19, I got drafted. I was out of the country for a couple of years and came back, and we built a really good league. I remember it still exists today, Greater New York City Ice Hockey League, just a bunch of local roller hockey guys. And we said, we now got ice, and we didn't know how we were going to pay for anything. They were charging us about $15 an hour for ice time, and nobody had money, and we managed. The first day we signed up 500 kids, and from there I had a job, normal stuff, a job, girlfriend, and that was it. And then I got a call one day from one of my former players. Do you want to come to Austin and coach? I thought it was Texas, but it was Austin, Minnesota. So I said, tell me about it. And I was putting air conditioners in and repairing them. So $60 a week. So they told me you can get $35,000 a year in a car. And the president of the team called me and he said, that's not true. I said, well, what do you get? What's the salary? He said, $2,000 a year and no car. So I said, all right, I'm ready for Texas anyway. And he said, no, we're in Minnesota. So I went there, and it was a tough deal. And I, in the meantime, coaching kids hockey, had become very good friends. First I read a book on coaching, a great book. Everybody should read it. Lloyd Percival's Hockey Handbook, and got some valuable information from that. And then I had written a letter to Anatoly Tarasov, the great Soviet coach, and he responded months later and invited me to come to the Soviet Union. He said, I'm a little concerned. Those who compliment us usually want to steal from us. But he said, there are no secrets in hockey, Lou. Today's secret is tomorrow's common knowledge. Just watch a team train or play, and there's everything you need to know in front of you. And I eventually got there. We became really good friends. And I brought him and Chernyshev and Horsky from Slovakia over to the US. I was working with Dennis McDonald. I said, why do you write books, print books and materials, and we do the same thing? Why don't we do it together and save money? We can get the same product out for half the price. And Dennis was great guy. We worked together for a number of years. I got the coaching program going, player development going, the development camps, the under 20 junior national team. It wasn't easy. It was hard. We didn't have look, when I went to work for USA Hockey in 1978, Kevin Allen's often written, the US had more men on the moon than we had players and coaches in the NHL. Can you imagine that? And our goal was to appreciate our friends and relatives all over the world, but not to copy any of them, just to steal the best information we could and try to mold something that would fit our hockey, our culture. And I think we've been able to achieve that over the years. And I feel USA is competitive, in the top 6 teams probably in the world, and competitive. And it's been great. And I often watch NHL games, and I think back to conversations with Tarasov. This was the hockey he dreamt of, what we see today. Skill, speed, incredible conditioning. He would have been very happy to see the way the game has gone. And I'm happy the way the game has gone. There's no room for hooliganism, cruel play. There's no need for any of that. And the girls set a great example, the women's hockey, because they play hockey. And I enjoy it. I just enjoy it. So that's where I'm at. Right now, I'm not working. So, but I'm getting up there, pretty old. I'll be 77 next birthday. That's it. Next.
Welcome to the club of age. Lou, Sammy Joe Small and Kim were both experienced with the National Female Program and the growth of female hockey in Canada. It's been huge. The USA has obviously made unbelievable strides with the female program as well. Sammy was on the broadcast last night. Good job, Sammy. You articulate things very well. I like your analysis of Cavallini's giving up of the first goal on the power play and not watching to the right shooting side. Really pertinent details. But Lou, Tom, I, and Tim particularly are more involved in the female game, but we do take an interest in the male game. And Daryl Belfry has popped on. I don't know whether he's going to chime in or not, but Daryl's working with the Toronto Maple Leafs presently as a skills / development coach. And much like yourself, Mike Benelli, he is an innovator trying to make a difference at the highest level. So I think this group sort of epitomizes wanting to grow the game, and I give us the title to serve the good of the game, both technically and ethically. So that's sort of where we come from. Mike, you're your role in development and the role with USA Hockey and what you're doing. I just wonder if you can comment on the history of the evolution of it, and if Lou can speak in on the development model and what you've done in the States, because you are making tremendous progress.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know if Tim, did you want to have a comment on Lou's his ability to steal a lot of information from the Russians, or did you have any other questions for Lou, real quick?
Well, not really a question, just a comment, but yeah, I always think of Mike Babcock, and his thing is rob and do. That's what good coaches do. They steal things and do and implement them themselves. But I was just asking, the second I heard, I haven't seen Lou for a long time, but I didn't know you're from Brooklyn, Lou. Did you happen to have the pleasure of knowing Dr. Frank Lodato by any chance?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Fellow Brooklyner and pioneer in sports medicine. He just passed from us recently, but he was a terrific man. I had the pleasure of working with him on a couple occasions, but I just kind of wondered. And I guess, like you, it struck me when you mentioned the Hockey Handbook, because that was the start, really, of my road to the NHL. I picked up that book. Yeah, I have the same copy myself. I picked up that book, I think the summer between high school and going to Brown my first year, and read it, was really intrigued by it, and obviously lived by the physical conditioning side of it for years afterward. And it certainly, that part of it helped pave the way for me to scratch out a living there for about 10 or 11 years. And my one comment was, it'd be really interesting, I think, for me to go back, and I might go back and read it again, and to see what my impressions of it would be now. And I would wholeheartedly agree that today's game is, what Tarasov preached, and would there be some real joy in his heart to see the way the game is played today.
And Lloyd had a big influence on Tarasov, because when I was in his living room, he had a bookcase with about 50 books in it, most of the ones he wrote, Tarasov. But he had Hockey Handbook, and I quizzed him on it, and he said it was the first book we used. And he said I had it translated for himself. And he said I read it several times, got some very good information and great ideas. And also I know that Lloyd had worked with the Detroit Red Wings, and I had the opportunity in hockey travels to get to know Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay, and of course they played for the Red Wings. And I brought it up to both of them separately, and asked them, what did you think? Because I thought the response would be, well, we don't need no college guy coming in and telling us how to play hockey and all this. They thought he was great. They respected him a lot. And the one thing that I enjoyed reading about it, because I've always thought this way, I'm not a physiologist, obviously, but the stretching, all the stretching on the ice that cost a lot of money. Stretch off the ice. And then if you see what Lloyd wrote, you don't have to stretch. Carry your own bag into the rink, and you're warmed up enough to start practice or a game. And I've always done it. My guys didn't get hurt. I didn't see injuries. Great players. And if you do want to stretch, go stretch out in the hall by yourself. Leave me alone. We're not going to waste time on the ice having guys crawling and stretching and all that. Because a lot of stuff is just common sense. I asked Gordie Howe, do you have a favorite kids coach that helped you? He said, no, didn't have coaches. Played on a frozen river, and my cousins and uncles and friends. That's how I learned. And so there's something interesting in going back on that. You know, there's something very interesting. I asked Neil Broughton once, and I thought he was one of the greatest American players ever, period, from any generation. What a player. He could play in traffic. He's a little bitty guy. He was some player, smart as a whip. I said, Neil, did you have a coach in kids hockey that really helped you? He said, I did. And I know the guy. He said he would give us, teaching us to be unselfish and pass. He'd give us 2 points for an assist, 1 for a goal. But he said, where I really learned to play hockey was in my boots out on the street every night, 4 or 5 hours with my brothers, friends. We just played. We played. That's what we did. And several Soviet players told me the same thing. So sometimes we overdo it with all the technical stuff. And you still got to be able to play the game. And sometimes you play the game best by playing the game. If we were stuck with one drill, one exercise to do, I think it would be a scrimmage, period. That's all you're allowed, one. That would be the drill. And then you look at goalkeeping. It amazes me. They look like cookie cutters. They all play basically the same. They got big equipment and they're big guys. But I used to love watching Glenn Hall, Jacques Plante, Terry Sawchuk, Tony Esposito, Cheever. All these goalies were different. Dryden. Every one of them was uniquely different, and every one of them was superb. Just great.
Lou, I'm going to tell a Tarasov story from my own experience playing with Canadian national team for Father David Bauer, living in Winnipeg. The Russians were in town, and I used to substitute teach when I wasn't on the ice practicing. But when the Soviets were in town, I went and watched him run practice. And he a little overweight. He had the toque on, but he ran practices that were so game specific in terms of executing tactics that would be successful against us. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I ended up helping Dave King with the 88 Olympic team. And Dave used to tell me many stories as well about Tarasov. And one time, apparently, Dave was visiting in the summer. Tarasov took him on a little canoe trip. They went together, and Tarasov pulled out the vodka. And he just knocked it back like you wouldn't believe. And Kinger, he tasted it, but he managed to pour it into the water without Tarasov noticing it. But by the time they finished the tour, the boat ride, Tarasov was a little wonky. Dave could still stand up and go, but two great hockey minds that I think, yeah, we've quoted Tarasov many times as a group. More important than speed of hand and speed of foot is the speed of mind. And what he did with the Soviets, playing against them in '88 up to that time period, was a schooling for us in how to play without the puck, because they did things with it that we are happening today in the game. And I think the players that came over from the Soviet Union to Detroit helped revolutionize the game and make the NHL sit down and take notice. And hockey really became a true world's game. So now Tom Malloy is on board. Tom, I'm sure the street hockey thing and I wrote down when Lou was talking about that. Can you talk about Yursanov and the idea of the game teaches?
Well, Yursi, I worked with him 1 year in Salzburg. He'd come one week a month, but I'd done stuff with him and Johanny Wallston before in Finland. And the two of them were buddies. And the theme of everything we did was the game is the greatest coach. And the other theme was enjoy the game. And I was guest coach he was coaching TPS in Turku in the early '90s, and I was a guest coach there, and he was the first guy I ever saw do transition games. I'd never really seen those before, and that was with that pro team. I think Koivu was like 18 years old at the time, and that's where Kiprusoff is from and all this sort of thing. So the game is always, everything starts and ends with a game, and the drills are kind of to isolate a little part of the game and then do it. So Yursi is a great proponent of using games all the time.
You know, Tom, Sammy, Joe, and Kim, during my first experience with the Oval team, the potentials, many national team players to come from that team, I talked to Haley Wickenheiser about, look, I'm not going to come out on the ice. Can you get him scrimmaging? Just play. Because the girls at the time just didn't watch hockey and just didn't play. So I did that, came out 30 minutes late, and Haley said to me, they couldn't scrimmage. They couldn't play. So I don't know they've discovered the joy of playing the game like I think you have to dedicate yourself to it to the degree that some people are. And but that's an interesting story where I found with the female game, are they watching it now, Kim and Sammy? Are they watching girls hockey, at least high level hockey, and adapting names? And to me, even watching the men's game for anybody coaching female or male hockey, it is a laboratory of the evolution of an improving game. So any comments on that, Kim or Sammy?
I think you're right, Wally. I think probably Kim might think the same thing. Not very many female players do watch the game, like the NHL game. And it's hard to find women's hockey on TV, so I don't know they necessarily see themselves in the NHL. So, I mean, the more games we can get on TV, the better. But also the more links, I think, to older players within their association. So, for instance, in the GTA, having the PW team, the junior team, linked to other teams helping coach those teams, those players then go out and watch those players. So I see a lot of that, I would say, Kim, that there's younger players watching the best juniors. They're not necessarily knowing the names of the national team players or knowing their tendencies or styles because they don't necessarily watch them. If you, at my camp in the summer, favorite players are still people like Cassie Campbell or Haley Wickenheiser. And these girls have never seen those girls play. They see them on commercials. So they're their favorite players.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, not only do they not watch the NHL, they don't watch the women that much because of the lack of opportunity. They also don't go play shinny. I was actually just writing a story for a book thing, and I was talking about when I used to play shinny growing up, and I was the only girl. I grew up in downtown Toronto, Lou. So, like, if there was ever back in the 90s somewhere for girls to play pickup hockey on the outdoor rink, it would have been in downtown Toronto. Like, this is a bit of an epicenter of women's hockey, and less than 1% of the time was there another girl out there. And I think that's still the case. They'll go play pickup hockey if all their friends will go with them, but they wouldn't dare be the only girl out there. And I actually, think that's the only reason I was a half decent hockey player is because I was out there with the boys stealing pucks because they sure as heck wouldn't pass to me. But as soon as you started talking, Lou, I went and grabbed my Percival book. And just to add to Wally's story, I happen to marry a Russian who doesn't drink and doesn't play hockey, but he reads Russian. So I got him he's also a computer science professor. So he took a bunch of Tarasov books off the internet for me. So I have a whole bunch of Tarasov stuff. Unfortunately, it's in the wrong language. So it's another motivation for me to learn how to read Russian. But I did want to say about the unstructured play. I think, I've been running a lot of ice this last couple months, and we play hand soccer all the time. I just throw a ball out on the ice and they have to play hand soccer across ice. And the girls always think it's weird. And the girls The coaches are like, this is amazing. They have to bend their knees. Look at them getting low, and the players are like, but this isn't, they think unless it's hockey or a drill where you go around a cone, like they don't understand it. But there's a good book written by Silken Lawman, who obviously was a amazing rower, called Child's Play. And it's just talking about the importance of unstructured play for all children. But I think it's a really great one. And that kind of spurred the idea to my mind of, how that's gone now. Yeah, I've got a 7, 5, and 3-year-old, and, you just go to the park and play. But, as they get a little older, it's like, well, you got to go to this practice and you got to go to this activity. I know Sammy's feeling the same way probably with her daughter. It's all very scheduled. It's not just go to the park and play random sports, like you said, Lou, for 5, 7 hours every night, like I did. So I think that's the fundamental difference when it comes to athletic development, right? It's all very structured. And in our hockey development with the girls, especially, they're so literal that if you tell them to go around the cone and stand on the hash marks, they're going to do that. They're not going to tell you to piss off and I'm going to do it my way, coach. So I think the unstructured play is actually even more valuable for the female game, because they don't do it naturally. They don't go and play shinny, but because they're so literal and they're coach pleasers, they're going to want to do it exactly the way you say it. So if you take all the rules out of it and just tell them to go and force them to, because they don't naturally want to do it that way, I think that could make some big differences in how we develop young players on the female side.
Kids quit. We found out kids quit. They play when they're about 11, 12, they start quitting because they're smaller than the bigger guys. They don't like hitting. It's not fun anymore. And I often say, look, my mother and father never saw me or my brothers, sisters play anything. My mother cooked and my father worked. They didn't come to games or drive us. They never got involved in that. And we were free to play. We were just free to play and have fun. Years ago, I'd come home from school, roll my books down, change. Where are you going? Play hockey. Okay, be careful. Don't get hurt. Be home by 6. That was it. Nothing else was said. Today, I would say, my mother would say, where are you going, Lou? I said, I'm going to work on my inside and outside edges for a half hour. Then I'm going to have my oxygen uptake level checked to see how much lactic acid I have. And then the coach is going to sit down with me for an hour, make me watch a video and tell me how dumb I am and why I shouldn't be playing. And this is not how it should be. It should be fun. Even old timers, everybody, it's got to be fun. That's the motivation. And then you can have all kinds of structure and instruction, but coaches should realize they are teachers and they should treat the players with respect and encourage them, make them feel better so they get better. Who wants to be ridiculed every minute? You're stupid, you're this, you're that. And that's why unstructured play is good. I've seen it. I lived in Italy. I lived in Germany. I lived in Holland. I like soccer. So I'd watch kids right out my window in Italy every day playing soccer. At least half of it was choose up, just play. And look at, they're at the top of Brazil, a famous American soccer player. I can't think of his name. He retired, he was good. And he took 6 months off. He went to Brazil and he just watched from one club to another around the country. He said they were playing and they were having fun. Yes, they get instruction, but you still got to be born. I'll argue with anybody. You still have to be born with some talents, by hand, whatever it might be. Hockey sense, the ability to compete. You got to be born with some of these qualities. And then you got to have the opportunity to try these things in a free atmosphere where you're not going to get criticized. Agree with me or not agree with me, that's my position on it anyway.
Peter Smith. Peter is, can you introduce yourself to Lou? I've done an introduction of everybody else and give a bit of your background for Lou. Go ahead.
Yeah. Lou, first of all, I apologize that I'm late. I was setting up the rink boards for my grandson's skating rink, so it was a legitimate hockey excuse. So anyway, it took a little longer than I expected. Anyway, thanks for being here, Lou. I apologize that I missed the beginning, but I'll get a chance to watch it a little bit on the recording that Wally does. I live in Montreal. I coached at McGill University here in Montreal for a number of years. I just recently retired from coaching McGill. I've been involved with the national team. I was involved with the national team for 7 years, number of world championships and Olympics and all that sort of stuff. And now I'm still involved in the game, still doing some coaching and skill stuff and all that, and having fun with it as always. So there it is in a nutshell.
I should interject there that when Peter says he coached a number of years at McGill, it's because he's too old. He was there too long. He can't remember exactly how many years it was, but it was a long time.
Right.
He won a bunch of national championships too, Lou. Just for information's sake. Glad you could get on, Peter.
Thanks for chipping in there, Danish Tim. Thank you.
Did you know Dr. Enos?
Ed Enos, yeah, he was at Concordia, which is the other university. Yeah, it's the second university in Montreal. But yes, I knew Ed Enos. That's definitely good man.
Is he alive?
You know, I don't know. That's a good question. I believe not, but I'm not 100% sure on that. That would go in that memory thing that Tim was talking about. I forget. I'm not sure.
Hey, I was gonna when Kim was talking there too, Kim. When we were talking about. Was it you or somebody said, well, they never play shinny? I was thinking, man, or woman, in your position with Leaside there, you should think maybe about carving out an hour of ice sometime on a Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, where it's open shinny time for various age groups and see what kind of a response you get. And what kind of delights the players get out of it. But it might be something to think about as somebody in a position of power there. I was going to comment too about, I don't know, Lou, that second book you held up, that wasn't Tarasov's book by any chance, was it?
Yes, I'll hold it up again. Road to Olympus.
Yeah.
It's, I believe, like, I think I searched for that last year and it's totally out of print. And if you need a supplement to your retirement dollars, you can get a pretty good dollar for that online. Like it was going online last year for like well over $1,000, I believe. Just as an FYI. But
you're not looking to buy one, are you?
Yeah.
Not for $1,000, but I'm definitely looking to buy one.
It'll be worth $2,000 in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Hang on to it.
Here's another one.
I'll check back with you.
Yeah, I wanted to say I wanted to support Tim on that shinny hockey stuff. I just think that's so great. Get the kids a chance to play free, and and I watch the practices at that level. All the practice. Well, no, that's not fair to say. A lot of the practices are so deliberate in nature. Getting them out there playing shinny, I think, is fantastic for them, for their development. Absolutely.
And as is the nature of this beast that is our Sharks call, we're kind of wandering all over the place. I definitely wanted at some point to get back to Mike and Lou and have them chat about the American development model. But this might be a good time too. I don't know how many of you had a chance to read that Coaches Site article I sent out about, which I hadn't heard about, which was about basically John Tortorella tearing a strip out of Trevor Zegras for his ultra creative assist, and was interested in, for sure, Lou's viewpoint and Mike's, both of them being Americans, not you guys, but Tortorella and Zegras, but everybody else's view of that too, if you happen to read it.
I didn't read it, but I saw the goal to Sonny Milano. I worked for his grandfather in Brooklyn about 40 years ago. How's that story? Zegras is a special player, very, very special. Right now, I saw him in the World Juniors twice. Immediately, I connected him to Neil Broughton, very similar in their game. And they're brilliant players, brilliant hockey sense, great hands, skills, and tough without fighting. They're tough. You can be very tough without going into fisticuffs or playing dirty. Um, I think Zegras is one of the best young players, and it's enjoyable to see that kind of. I don't know how they can do that, even. And a few years ago, another college player, I think he was a Canadian kid, came around the net, put the puck on his blade of his stick, and he stuffed it in. I think up in Vancouver the game was. I'm not sure, but I didn't even know that was legal. And you got to give players like that a big pat on the back because they're taking it to the next level. They're not afraid to be creative.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
know-
I'd just like to
Yeah,
add in
Mike-
too. You know,
Mike
as
and,
far as
Mike
the
and-
Trevor.
Sorry, Mike and Daryl want to chime in, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the the Trevor Zegras story is great because I think it's just it just shows John. I mean, John's trying to be. I think just listening to that commentary, I think he was just trying to be a little too like against that, right? Just say, hey, do we have to go that far, to be circus acts? And then the grow the game people are going to say, well, so many more people viewed that. It was like 50 million times or something that everybody saw. But it's an interesting story about Trevor. So Trevor's dad and I grew up together, and when I brought over the floorball sticks, you talk about free play and shinny and off ice hockey. When I first brought the floorball sticks over from Finland, and Gary Zegras, Trevor's dad, was the first dad in our area to buy 6 sticks. Like the next day, I brought him in. He goes, "What do you got? What are you doing with those things?" Trevor used to play floorball every day, 3 hours a day in the driveway, stick handling between the dog's legs, beating his sister up, beating his brother up, putting him in net, stick handling around him. And it was just, you talk about the freedom of play. It was the same thing, with Cole Caulfield, floorball all the time. The Turcotte kid, I think Dave Starman can chime in too. I know he's in the car, but he knows the world junior guys better than anybody. But I think, to Lou's point, these modern players that have the freedom to do those kind of things. I think, that was the interesting thing to me with the commentary from John was, what are you going to do? You're going to rip the kid apart when he gets to the bench for doing that? I said, that's what we want. I think we want that ability, but to have, for him, like Lou's saying, to have the freedom in his head to do that and not worry about the repercussions of it not succeeding was, for me, the bigger victory. Like, I thought that was, and then Milano hitting the puck out of the air, I thought that was even harder than the little flip. I mean, it was pretty wild. But I think it's just, when you look at these modern players, I think it is because when you see these kids, that everybody's trying to catch up to those kids, but they're not seeing that those are the kids that are doing the unstructured play. They're the ones that are spending the 5-6 hours on their own without mom and dad having them do inside edge drills. Like, they're doing all that stuff on their own. They're finding that game on their own. And those are just special kids that go through our game. So, I mean, that's my only comment about that Zegras part, but I'm here to listen to Lou, so I don't want to chime in too much, but I think, Lou's definitely I know where we are here in the U.S. I mean, he is the godfather of USA hockey. I mean, the coaching education program, the junior development program, the ability for all of us to understand that the game, is coming from a place that's really unstructured. And to Lou's point, looking in Brooklyn and these societies, different areas of the country where ice is not available as much. We don't have the ability to get on a pond and skate forever and have that free play, or skate on a river or that kind of stuff. So I think it's really interesting, I think we've actually stunted the growth of the American game because we don't have more free play, and we don't have more school hockey, and we don't have more roller hockey. We're what I think is, and I think Lou and I have had these conversations often, is we're actually shrinking the sport. We've got more kids playing, but we're shrinking the ability for where we are in the U.S. to have, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids playing hockey just like they play soccer. And I still think we're still far away from getting there, because we're eliminating the ability just for free play and recreational sport. But, that's you know, and Lou sees that in where he grew up, you know, in the Brooklyn, New York area, in the metro area. There's certainly a lot more kids playing hockey, but they're certainly playing hockey in a more structured way.
Can I just say one quick thing? What Zegras and Milano did the other day, the old time people think will feel it's showboating. But remember a guy by the name of Michael Jordan when he came into the NBA? They ripped him, the old timers, everybody. Show off. What is he? Look at this spin around thing, all these deals he did. And of course, he grew the game overnight. And there's a large segment of the US population that kids that are watching those kind of plays, like we saw, it appeals to them. It makes it really interesting. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on ice time. You just got to, like you said, floor hockey, roller hockey. Our kids in California, they all roller skate and play with a stick and a ball all summer, all of them. And the best stick handlers and the best puck handlers in the last 20 years from the US have been the majority kids from California. Eye-hand foot coordination, eye-hand coordination. You know, it's just like the Dominican kids in baseball. They're dirt poor. They pick up rocks, they break a stick off a tree, and they hit that. Imagine trying to hit a pebble with a branch, and they do that. Then you want to know, where did David Ortiz and these guys come from? They're the best players in Major League Baseball today. Eye-hand coordination. The greatest, the first player in baseball to go in the Hall of Fame with 100% of the votes, the relief pitcher for the Yankees from Panama, Rivera. He didn't have a glove till he was 16. He used to make his own glove out of milk carton. So we don't need all these fancy things. We need commitment. Players to love it and be committed. And Fred Shiro told me once, he said, Lou, I said, what do I have to do to become a decent coach? He said, you have to be committed. I said, I'm dedicated. He said, no, not good enough. I didn't say dedicated. I said committed. Well, what do you mean? And he said, ham and eggs, and he walked away from me. I said, Fred, please, what are you talking about? Ham and eggs. He said, Lou, the chicken is dedicated. The pig is committed. You got to be committed. And it emphasized an important point, and I've never forgotten that. And I tell that to players all the time. You got to be committed. You can do anything if you're committed. You can't give up. Persistence.
Daryl, go ahead. You've been waiting patiently. I think you're muted.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It's not you, Lou. It's all of us like to chat. Go ahead, Daryl, if you want.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Lou, I've been really looking forward to hearing you speak for quite a while now. I hold you with a similar affinity as I hold Wally. I when early on in my career, everyone had told me, that you need to understand the history of the game in order to be able to progress and able to understand. And so the second that they told me I needed to know the history of the game, that of course told me as a very young person that I really did not want to know the history of the game. I wanted to know what was going on now and then progress from where the game was at that moment in time and where the game was going forward. Now, that served me really well throughout most of my career. And now as I'm getting towards the end, as I only have a few years left of doing what I do, now I'm really interested in the history of the game. And so what I am most interested in is people who have personal firsthand insight and knowledge and stories of their interaction with people who are among the greatest thinkers and performers of our sport. That's what I'm interested in now. So I really appreciate you being on this call because, like I said, as I get towards the end of my career, the history of the game and where a lot of these ideas really originated from, which I frankly didn't care much about when I was trying to carve my own niche. now I'm very interested in it. So I'm really excited to hear more about just any stories you have. It's literally, I could listen to you read the phone book. I just really am excited about any other stories you have. I wanted to make also a comment on girls hockey and them not watching the game, and this whole hole that is in the hockey sense development component of female game, and why they don't watch. And I've been, secretly doing some of my own research on why some of these things are occurring, because it makes no sense to me. And so I talked to my own kid about it, and I asked her a few times, hey, like, do you want to watch a game? And she's like, many times when I've asked her, particularly the last, I'd say 8 or 10 times I've asked her over the last 4 or 5 years, she's given me pretty much the same answer every time. And that is, what is it you want me to see? What am I looking for? So I don't know if this is a thing with girls or whether it's just my own kid and her uniqueness just as a person and the way she views it. But if I tell her, like, I think you should watch Matt Barzell, and I think you should watch his entries because I think he's really special with his entries, or I think you should watch Matthews and just watch how he navigates his way around the offensive zone and is always available to shoot, or watch how he takes pucks away, or I think you should watch Crosby and just how aggressive he is when he's on the puck. Like, nobody's more ferocious on the puck. Maybe you should watch him. Maybe you should watch Cale Makar, because it's like a gazelle on skates. The guy just is so fluid and he just moves so fluidly. If I tell her what to look for, she's very excited to watch the game, but she's not going to watch it to watch it. And I'm curious if there's more we could do to direct, because you're right, there isn't enough female players in the game, on TV, or in prominent enough roles, or doing special enough things that don't occur every 4 years, where there's just a hell of a lot of time in between an Olympic Games for them to get curious about what's going on and see the special elements that occur, that go on in an Olympic Games, and just the stakes and the excitement and the enthusiasm and the special people doing special things every 4 years. And now it could be 6 or 8, depending on what the hell goes on with our world right now. But it's just a long time in between. And yet every Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, you can watch any of the players I discussed. All of them are doing special things every night. And there's a bit of, in her mind, a little nausea of not just going to watch it. I want you to tell me what should I be looking for? A couple of times to say, well, why don't you watch it and tell me what I should be looking for? And so she watches, I would say, more hockey than most, just in the nature of there's hockey going on here all the time. But I think that's interesting about just how, I don't know that, I certainly don't have the answer, but I think her answer may have insight into why or what or how we could approach it a little bit different. So I just wanted to add that, but I'm more similar here to kind of Michael's sentiments that I don't want to be talking here at all. It's not about me at all, but I did want to chime in and just thank you, Lou, for being on here. And I'm going to try to shut up and listen, which is exactly what I think this forum for me really is, especially today, because you hold a lot of things that I was extremely disrespectful about for the most part of my career. And between you and Wally and many others that have firsthand insight into the greatest people in our game, I'm just really excited to hear more about it. So thank you again for being on.
You're welcome. But I don't have answers. I have opinions, and everybody's opinion counts. And tell your daughter to coach. Tell her to go to the rink and help little kids teams, boys and girls. And I found out when I was first started, I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a coach. I would have been happy with a pizzeria and married Joanne LaRusso, and that would have been my life. I would have been very content. It all just fell into itself. And of course, going to Russia, financing it myself, at least being aware enough to know they were doing something when I saw a game in '69 out of Stockholm, Soviet Union and Sweden. I said, this doesn't look like Toronto at Madison Square Garden playing the Rangers. This is different hockey. And I was attracted to it. I sat down, I wrote a letter to when they scrolled the name Terrace. I never heard of a name like that. I thought, what kind of name is that? I thought it was Anthony. And I wrote it down and wrote him a letter, and he wrote me back a letter months later and invited me. Told me how to get a visa and everything. Broken English, but I should have kept that letter. It had green ink and red ink.
More than the book, Lou.
Huh?
It would be worth more than the book.
Yeah, and it was an eye-opening experience, and I was ridiculed right in Brooklyn. We're not doing that kind of stuff. And by the way, Wally, he had great admiration for Father Bauer, as most of us should have. If you don't know him, admire him anyway. He's a good man and a good hockey man. And he had great respect for your teams, especially Seth Martin. He told me that was his favorite Canadian player. And I told Marshall Johnston a number of years ago, I passed that on to Marsh, and Marsh says, you ought to call Seth. He's not doing great. He's up in above Washington there. I can't think of it. Trail, BC. Give him a call. Let him know that. Tell him that. It'll pick his spirits up. And I did. I called him up, introduced myself, and I said, listen, I need you to know that Anatoly Tarasov, you remember him, right? He said, yes, of course. Played against him many times. His teams. He really had great respect for you. He wanted his goalkeepers to learn from how you play and how smart a goalie you were. He thought you were the greatest. You're his favorite player outside of the Soviet Union. And he got emotional. He was so thrilled. Then sure enough, 6-8 months later, he passed on. But at least he heard those words. Not from Tarasov, I was the messenger. And I'm happy I was able to tell him that, because it's quite a compliment. And he used to call me a Canadian. Mój stary, tolsty, kanadsky drug. My old fat Canadian friend. He insulted everybody. That's the way he was, but he was a good guy.
Kim, go ahead.
I was going to say, Lou, with that shirt on, you're definitely a Canadian these days. That's about as Canadian tuxedo as you get. Yeah, you're right in there, bud. You're right in there. No, I put my hand up an hour ago, but that's fine. I was going to say, the net flip, the flip over the net, I don't understand why, that's a fundamental hockey skill. Like, if you're in the blue ice and you want to roof it, that's the exact same skill. If you're a D trying to clear the zone, there ain't no traffic up high. I don't understand why, this is crazy. Ooh, no, I teach all my players that skill. That, I remember when people started scoring goals in the NHL, flipping the puck in the air, and everyone's like, wow, there's nobody up there, no shin pads to hit. But, someone made the comment, Poulin and Daou have been doing that for years. I used to pay my players $20. I still do it if they can flip the puck over the net and score it on the other side. They have to be warmed up first, else they're going to pull a groin. But they flip it to themselves and try to score. I bet you I put that money on the table for 15 years to try and get girls to do it. And I've had a couple players actually take me up on it. But I just wanted to touch on Daryl's point, because he's, as always, hit the nail on the head. One exercise I do with the teams I coach is I have them watch a female hockey game, and I ask them to identify with a player on the ice and watch that player. So if they're younger players, I might say, hey, you play like Spooner, you play like Poulin, you play like Daou. That alone, as we can imagine, those of you who coach girls, it's worth its weight in gold to even tell them, I see you playing like Jocelyn Larocque. They're like, really? Like, yes, that is you. Like, confidence is queen in girls hockey, right? So even just that little tire pump is amazing. But having them watch it in that analytical way to say, what is Poulin doing in this situation? What is Spooner doing in this situation? And to see themselves and their game translated into that player. I've done it with 10-year-olds and I've done it with 20-year-olds. But it always has high value. And there's enough girls hockey, women's hockey links online that you can find to call up, one of the Olympic games that, maybe Tim or Peter coached in, and you can find the grainy footage of some of those gold medal games. But you can easily do that same exercise. And I think that's how you build hockey IQ with the girls. I also think, and I'd be interested in Lou's take on this, I find this is the question I get from most coaches. How do we develop hockey IQ in the girls? The skills they're pretty good at, but how do they think the game if they're not watching the game as much as the boys? So I'm curious, I have my own thoughts on it, but, how do you start to infuse hockey IQ, especially, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, in girls, that's kind of when they start to get the bug. I know it's a little younger with the boys maybe. But how do you start to infuse in team practices? How does that look in the USA, like coach development modules of, other than like small area games, and how do we start to infuse this so they don't get to 13 years old and they don't know, how to find open space or how to create support?
I got a question to Kim. It's related to it. It's directed at Daryl. I have other ideas, but I would like to hear Lou's opinion on that hockey IQ model, the creativity model, how to instill it younger too. But Daryl, have you ever asked your daughter to watch a particular player that she might emulate or that she plays like? I don't know if Daryl's still on or not.
Yeah.
But
So I've been more in favor of opening up a discussion about a particular player that I had watched or studied that day and said, man, like that's someone that they have a unique skill. So I want her to learn how to identify with the best players for her own education of hockey and appreciation for the game. Less about emulating. I don't care if she goes on the ice and emulates anybody. I would just want to educate. I have insight, unique insight into why great players are great. I spend enough time with them. They share a lot of things with me that they don't share with anybody else. And I have unique insight, and it'd be foolish for me not to share that with her. So my goal and my objective with her is to highlight what makes these players great and that they do it over and over and over again. So whatever it is that the player does that's unique, they tend to do it many, many, many times, which is a separator in and of itself. The best players have the best habits. They do it repetitively. So my goal in sharing with her and trying to get her to watch some things, and especially with her question, it dovetails it nicely in for me, where I now I'll open a discussion with her and just say, man, that McCarr goal he scored the other night, like that's something, like he might do that 6 or 8 times a game and he doesn't score, but he does it 6 or 8 times a game and it's a habit of his, and then that's the one he scored on. It's just really interesting. And then I'll show her a few clips and she might, be more inclined to watch those things. But my objective in overall objective with her is to get her to appreciate what great hockey players actually do. What does that actually look like? And it dovetails nicely with her question. So I'm learning how to get what I ultimately want, which is to pass on the knowledge that I've acquired over the years, pass it on to her. But I'm also trying to do it in a model in which she's telling me that's how she learns. She's asking me, this is how I learn, or telling me, I'm not going to sit and watch a game just because. If you have a reason for me to watch a game, I'd be more than happy to watch it. But I'm not just going to sit down and watch a game. So I'm I'm trying to dovetail her question with my objective. Is really all I'm doing. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, you went beyond my question. I personally thought of Morgan Riley as a player that plays like she does. I'm not saying she should play like him, but what you're doing with Morgan and his engagement in the offensive zone, how deep he comes down relative to what you demonstrated with her at the camp you ran with juniors, and then watching her play at the national team camp. I think there's something to be learned from watching young players doing different things that maybe they're not ready yet at the next level for. And but Morgan Riley's name came to my mind when who does she play like? And I think if you think of many of these young players that are coming up and are very creative, if they're allowed to be, they may set a different standard of play the way the game's going to play. Because, like Lou mentioned earlier, the game is changing before our eyes, and we have to keep up with it. So,
well, I think one of the things with this whole thing, and this is what I'm trying to understand, because I don't know anything about females at all, like nothing. I live with my wife. I know nothing about her, to be honest with you. She lives her, the way she thinks, the way she feels, the way it's all foreign. I'm trying to understand, but it's a lifetime of understanding. I'm never going to get there. I've accepted that. I live with my daughter. She's a beautiful kid. She's wonderful. I don't know the first thing about her, how she thinks, how she feels. I'm learning, but I don't really know. So I have to listen. I got to listen and try to understand more. What I know for sure is that boys love modeling. They love modeling. They like to watch their favorite player. They like to go in the street, go on the ice, go on Xbox, do whatever, and try to emulate those movements. They want to learn those movements. They'll spend hours trying to emulate and duplicate and then innovate on top of those things, which is what we're seeing now more than ever. I don't know if females are wired that way. I think that they have the capacity for modeling, but it has to be presented differently. And our way of doing it, like watch the game and go do it, that doesn't fit with the way that the girls that I'm around think. No, maybe I'm around the wrong girls. That's possible. And maybe there are a whole bunch of them that do it this way. That's entirely possible. Like I said, I don't know shit about any females, how any of them think. And the ones that I'm around, I know for certain they don't model like this. There's another way to do it. I have no answers. I just know that the modeling expectation that we have for females is antiquated, and it's never going to work because I don't think they're wired that way. We have to come at it a different way, is my only point on the subject. Not to divert from what we're really talking about, but that's where I'm at. And I think we need a lot more women who know more about women than men telling women what the hell they should do or think. That's for sure what I think.
I agree with you. If it matters, I agree with you. The women should be coaching women. If they're good enough to play, they're good enough to coach.
Well,
I'm going to.
Sorry, I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to jump
Kim.
in
I need to shut
as
up.
the resident woman. Sammy left me alone here. I don't, and I agree with you, Daryl, but I don't even know that it's modeling. It's not necessarily that I would tell a player, go watch Natalie Spooner and do what she does. I think half the battle is saying, I think you play like Natalie Spooner. Even me just uttering those words to a 12-year-old girl is going to be like, really? And that is value in and of itself, right? But as she's watching it, and I've done this for over 10 years with teams, right? It's not, I agree with you. She's not going, oh, look at the way she uses her inside edge, or I'm not sure the right term for it, but it's more of a general feeling and an understanding of, hey, here's the impact she makes on the game. Oh, she's really good on the forecheck. And I would ask them actually to write down, now they do it on their phone, write down 3 things you see in that player that you think you also do well, right? I'm not saying go and play like Spooner. I mean, it'd be great if everyone could play like Poulin, because then we wouldn't have this goal scoring problem in women's hockey. But just to identify, hey, I see this part of me in her, or I see her in me. It's all about confidence. I think, you know, Daryl, you live with 2 women, you know that, right? Confidence is everything. And in coaching girls, like, I can teach them all the skills in the world, but if they don't believe they can do it, it doesn't really matter. If they don't believe they can do it at all, or they don't believe they can do it in a game, if they don't believe they can do it in a game under pressure in big moments, I mean, that's the battle, right? So it's less about go out and replicate it, because I can honestly say for myself, I never went out and watched, you know, the Leafs back when they were good and was like, oh, I got to be Doug Gilmour, or I got to play like Andrew Chuck. I don't actually remember that thought going through my mind, but I do remember watching the patterns of it and the way that it, you know, developed, and understanding more on a conceptual level, as opposed to, I want to go out and do that exact thing Dougie did. Although I did try the behind the back pass as you go behind the net, and to my friend, I did try that one. Never successful, but that one was a pretty good one
That's why you're coaching now, Kim.
Hey, I can still score, Timmy. That's worth its weight in gold in girls hockey. So, you know, put me in the blue ice. I'm still batting pretty well from that spot.
I think that is exactly it, though. The way you just described it is exactly it. Every male coach here has at one point in their life coaching told a player or asked a player, who's your favorite player? And that player has gone out and emulated. They YouTube the player, they see all the different goals they score, and they're out in their driveway trying to do it. As soon as Zegras scored, the second the puck hit Milano's stick, it wasn't even in the net. And there were 100,000 males across the world outside in the driveway trying it with their buddy. That's just how it's all wired. That's how they do it. And then now you're going to see 1,000 videos coming up of them not doing that, but their next iteration of what that's going to look like. The horse is out of the barn. These guys are now, it's in the kids' hands. They're going to do it, and there's going to be some other crazy thing that's going to be occurring. That's modeling, and then innovation that comes from the messing around with the modeling. Girls aren't wired that way, or at least the ones that I'm around are not wired that way. And if we want girls to watch hockey, we have to come up with a different way or reason, because they're not as inspired to action from what they're watching. It's not the same. We have to come at it differently. It's my experience.
I want Kim to issue that $20 challenge to Trevor Zegras. See how long it takes him to do it in a game.
I'm not social media savvy enough, but I can ask one of my players to do it for me. But that would mean I have to get a video of someone actually doing it first. But I had I'm sure some of you would know this name, Brienne Wilson-Bennett, who was in the Team Canada program for a while and quite the goal scorer, usually of the ugly variety, but often of the beautiful variety. And I coached her in midget with the Arrows. And we spent many 20 minutes after late night practice, her trying to win that $20. And she tried it actually at U18 Nationals. So I coached her at U18 Nationals as well. And she tried the move to score to herself in a game at U18 Nationals. But again, you know, she is probably one who was watching NHL hockey most nights, I would guess, just knowing her personality.
Mike, maybe your buddy, or Dave's on. Dave can maybe pass it on to Trevor. He can make $20 if he can make it happen someday.
That's only $20 Canadian. Can I just say, we're not doing the American conversion here.
I better clarify that. 20 Canadian.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Dave Starman. Can I chime in a second on this topic?
Absolutely.
On the note of the modeling and the emulating of players, and I do believe in it. I think one thing that we as coaches make a little bit of a mistake on when it comes to this is we are always telling players to watch great NHL players, and I think that group is the 10% of hockey players on the planet that can do what they do, and I don't think we spend enough time getting our players to watch the players that are more like them at the levels that they're at. And I'll use my son as an example, who's a tier 1 U16 player. When he was 14 years old, I said to him, you know who I really want you to watch? And I pulled out some old films, and I know it's a different game now. I said, I want you to watch Ken Morrow. I want you to watch the way Ken Morrow played the game. It was smooth, it was efficient, it was simple, it was clean. And I think that at times we shoot for the moon with a lot of our players. And I find that getting the
Oh, we lost you, Dave.
Yeah, he might be on the Belt Parkway, so
Uh,
looking for loose
He
tire.
he brings up a good point. Early in my career, I was trying to figure out what the best. I was coaching 11-year-olds, and I wanted to know as they were moving up what 12-year-olds should look like. So I spent a lot of time watching the best 12-year-olds because I wanted to know what my 11-year-olds should look like the following year. And then when they were 12, I tried to figure out who the best 13 and 14-year-olds were, go watch them to see what those expectations are. I think that there is something to do with that. Maybe the modeling is too far up the chain. I think he brings up a really good point. And it might not be NHL association. It might be just the best, the better kids, or kids that they can identify with a particular skill that they do often at the level that's just a year above, that are their friends at school that are just a year older. Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, I think Daryl, I think, for me too, all the stuff that I do with the youth hockey kids, I try not to get a lot of video of NHL and college guys. I try to, when I'm trying to teach a concept or something that's happened in the game, I just try to find like the NCDC level, or, the 18U or the 17U level, so the kids can see closer to what they are and what the challenges are for a player that's comparable to their level, not somebody that's an elite athlete that's honed their craft. So I think I think to Dave's point, it's just, in your point, I really, that's a lot of things I try to do is find that modeling, in hockey and systems and the type of routes kids are taking, and try to show it at the 16, 18U level to a 14, 12U level. And I think that certainly helped, because I think it gives the kids a perspective of, wow, I'm not really that far from that. Like, that's not a leap. That's just something I could do today. But Lou, if you could, what I think these guys would love, and again, I'm in the same boat. I could, I'll call Lou this afternoon and talk to him for 4 hours. But if, I think one of the great things, though, if you could talk about a little bit about that the area of USA Hockey, from the growth of the perspective of when the ADM came to be, like when all those conversations started, and maybe some of the pushback. I know, like the Canadians and the Europeans, and we talk in USA Hockey about stealing and taking and emulating a lot of the stuff that the Finnish programs were doing and the Swedish programs are doing. But maybe talk about, about what that evolution was from the American development model perspective, and even some of the pushback that we had going into that.
It really started in 1979. I had come out there, they interviewed me, and they asked me if I'd come working. I was coaching a junior team. When I thought I was going to Austin, Texas, it was Austin, Minnesota, and we won the national championship, and it was really a hybrid style of hockey. And that's when I first, in 1975, this happened. It's when I met Herb Brooks. He called me up and he said, I'd like to, he was coaching Minnesota. He said, I'd like to speak to Lou Vairo, please. I said, speaking, who's this? He said, this is Herb Brooks. I'm the hockey coach at the U. I didn't know what he was talking. I never heard of that, the U. In Minnesota, they say that. He said to me, I said, what's the U? He said, he got mad. He said, University of Minnesota. You never heard of it? I said, no. Did you ever hear of Brooklyn College? And from that, we became friends, really good friends. And he believed in hybrid hockey, and, he did, but he didn't do it because too much to risk. He wanted to be an NHL coach someday, and a lot of Americans were afraid to do it. It wasn't acceptable. At that time, the Flyers were at the top of their game, straight up and down, and fighting and that kind of hockey. And I didn't like it. I didn't like that kind of hockey, and I wasn't afraid of anybody then or now. When you grow up in Brooklyn and you got to get into 2 fights on the way you walk into school, 2 fights in school, and 3 fights coming home, you don't care. You know how to fight, and you fight. But I didn't like it. I wanted hockey to be a more beautiful game with skill, speed, and cohesiveness, cooperation. And I was never afraid to do what I thought was right. And if it's not, fire me, throw me out, do whatever you want, but I'm going to go on my terms. And anyway, I said to him, why don't you come down, watch us practice? He wanted to know how we were doing certain things. And Herb said, I've been down. I've watched some of your, I came down with John Mariucci and Jack Bladderwick and Warren Strello, all great hockey men. I didn't know who they were. How would I know from Brooklyn? This is Minnesota people. But anyway, we became friends. And he said, would you bring your team up every Monday night to play our JV? In those days, the JV at the University of Minnesota was as good or better than 90% of the college varsity teams. They had so many players, so many walk-ons. And from that, it encouraged me that he had respect, and he liked that. He said he played against Soviet teams when Tarasov was coaching, but he said, geez, it's risky to try all that. Will they do it? I said, I don't make anybody do anything. I offer it to them, show them, tell them, and if they want to do it, they do it. I don't make anybody play a position they don't want to play. It's up to them. And life goes on. We'll manage. Anyway, when I got hired by USA Hockey, which was AHOUS, then Amateur Hockey Association of the United States, you could hardly even say it. It was so long. Bob Johnson changed the name when he became executive director. He heard the receptionist say, good afternoon, Amateur Hockey Association of the United States. Bob said, from now on, we're USA Hockey. That's how that came about. And he didn't wait for board of directors to approve it or anything. He just did it. Smart guy, great guy. And I had been overseas enough times to see different hockey. I had been to Canada most of my life. People don't know this, but I worked as a scout for St. Catharines Blackhawks when Frank Milne was the coach and Marcel Dion was playing. And I was sending players from Brooklyn, if you can believe it, to Welland, Ontario, Niagara Falls, St. Cat's. And so I watched a guy named Pop Teal in St. Catharines run a Saturday morning minor hockey deal with little kids. And he had 6 nets on the ice, cross ice. And again, I saw that and I loved it. He had 60 kids at once on the ice, loving hockey and getting better. And then when I was in Sweden, I saw it. When I was in Soviet Union, I saw it. I said, why don't we do that? We should be doing that. And I formed a committee after I got hired by AHOUS, USA Hockey. I had great people on it. Bob Johnson, Herb Brooks, Lou Lamorello, the physiologist, Dr. Wayne Harris, a psychologist, somebody else, all these different people. We had 2 meetings, but most of them resisted me with what I wanted to do. I said, we should make pamphlets because it's cheap to do. We only had 4 employees. That's it. Today, there's well over 100, maybe 140. I said, we can afford this. We need age groups under this, under that. You can't have coaching seminars. Look, one of the greatest hockey men in the world, Scotty Bowman. I've been there when we had a hockey coaching seminar, and most of the coaches in the audience coached under 10, under 8. They don't need to listen to power play talk and stuff, stuff like that. They need to know basic things that can be practical. I said, we have to do everything age specific, and we did. And I still have the pamphlets. If I'm ever on this deal again, I'll bring them and show them to you. I can hold them up. and show them to you, the original pamphlets that were great. And that is what ADM is today, basically. It's a little more sophisticated than then, but, it was just me basically doing it. And today we have a staff of 16, 17 people and quite a bit of money to work with. I had to beg just to get the postage for them. And I remember bringing them to the post office myself and licking stamps. It was unbelievable, but we got it done. That was the beginning. And then it kind of died out because people didn't believe in all those things that we do in ADM now. But it made sense to me. And I'll tell you what Tarasov told me. I said to him one time, "What do you mean you have no secrets?" He said, "We don't have secrets. You could see what we do." I said, "Anatoly, what about, give me one great, I call it a secret. What's one of the," he said, "You want to develop hockey players, you got to let them play and be creative. But you know what else you got to do, Lou? You got to make them play in small spaces with congestion at high speed. That's the best way. One-on-one in a small area." When we first started, and we were 60, 70 years behind the great hockey players of Canada, I had to freeze in Gorky Park, the tennis courts, and we put up a canvas tent so when the sun came up, even in the winter, it wouldn't melt the ice. And we could only have maybe three players at a time out there rotating. So, because we didn't have a rink and we didn't have room. And I noticed that the faster I forced them to play in the tightest area, and I'd skate through them sometimes as an obstruction, the better they got. So he said, that should be a credo of yours. Pass on to your people. Train the kids and the adults, small areas, high speed, push a goal through it or a net or a chair. Just distract them, make them overcome those obstacles. Then when the game starts, it's like they're going on a vacation on a real rink with room, space, and time. They'll play great, and they'll have honed their skills. But that's about it with the ADM. It's a good program. I like it. I think Kenny and the boys did a great job. But it was really first to stand. Kenny used those and asked me to look at all his notes after he had put everything together, make comments, and I did. And but they've done a good job, and they've elevated it to a good level, and it's working and it's helping. Again, no secrets, common sense. It's all common sense when you break it down and think about it. Does that answer it, Joe? Mike?
Yeah, I mean, no, well, yeah, I mean, I think yeah, definitely. I know Wally said it. I don't know if Wally, if you had your hand up for, I know you're probably taking a lot of notes and you always have great questions. So I'll defer to you.
I actually forgot to let my hand down, to tell you the truth, Mike. I'm really glad you asked Lou that question about the origin of the model. I find, and Barry's left, but the LT model, we're required to present on it at coaching clinics here. And the package that we're given, it's about an hour-long package. And quite frankly, I don't use that material provided by Hockey Canada. It sort of makes it complicated to sell the idea of the long-term process, and it always ends up at the elite level. The purpose of Hockey Canada's program is more focused on the elite hockey players in the NHL, which we all appreciate, but there appears to be in minor hockey a neglect of the purpose of what they're coaching for, and that's developing life skills to become an elite player or an elite citizen or an elite person. So I find delivering the coaching clinics and referring to the long-term development model, I've added the it's not about player development. I add the word people, long-term player and people development. In fact, I might put people before player, because the ethical piece of what we're doing is not to develop NHL players. It's going to make better NHL players than we presently have. And it's going to create a game that's not going to have the problems in it that we presently have. Talking about Kyle Beach, talking about the abuse that's gone on with the hazing processes over many years. So I think in minor hockey, with USA Hockey and Hockey Canada, they have to prioritize the development of people through sport, which will do a better job at developing elite players because they'll be elite people. So that's sort of where I come from on the long-term development model. And I look at what Hockey Canada provides in terms of resources and curriculum. And the ethical piece needs to be focused on a lot more about coaching and why are you coaching, for what purpose, and also teaching fundamentals at a younger age that the elite player will get because they probably invested tons of money and it's become a rich man's sport to get that kind of help. So I'm trying to make a connection between the good of the game, minor hockey, and pro hockey. To me, they're no different. If you treat them the same way and you take a different approach to it, you just add the long-term people and player development. And I think you've got a better chance of achieving success and the good of the game. That's just my 2 bits worth.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in, Wally, just because the short time I've been on this call and getting to listen to you guys speak, and the overriding theme really just does come back to how are we treating the people that we work with, right? And I think Lou's got some great anecdotal stories and real life stories. And Lou, I'd love maybe for the group to hear some of the stuff that you've talked to me about how you view a player that makes your team, and how you view that person in a personal way, right? Not as a piece on the chess set, but how you've connected over your career with individual athletes. And you don't have to say particular names or call anybody out, but I think you do add so much value to this call to hear about the way you've evolved as a coach and working with players individually, and what you expect from a player when you select them to play for you. What are the attributes you like to bring to that environment?
I had great role models: Emil Francis, Al Arbor, Tarasov, Horsky, lots of great role models. But I got to tell you, I didn't become a reasonably decent coach till I had children of my own. And I understood the love a parent has for their children. I mean, I had to cut people in my life. I hated it. I absolutely hated it and stuff. But when you have your own kids and you see them mistreated, or you think they might be mistreated, and I, of course, would never say a word. My ex-wife used to say, "Lou, why don't you?" I said, "Nope." The only thing I say in any sport, any kids coach at the end of the year, I always gave them a bottle of wine. They didn't even know I was the kid's father, my son's father. I'd give them a bottle of wine, shake their hand. "Thank you for your time and volunteering. It's appreciated." But I became more sensitive. And then I ended up retiring from coaching a number of years ago. And I'm sitting in the office at USA Hockey, and the executive director comes down with Jimmy Johansson. It was his first year, and I know Jimmy since he's 10. And Art Berglund, who was going to retire in a year. So this is 2020, where the World Championships were in St. Petersburg, Russia. And Dougie comes down with those 2 guys in my office, and they said, "So help me God, this is all true and accurate." He says, you got to coach the men's national team in 3 weeks. I said, what? I don't coach anymore. I don't even follow the game as closely as I used to. I don't know the players. He says, you got to do it. You can't get a coach. By the way, to you Canadian guys, you'll be shocked. That's how I ended up coaching in 1984. I wasn't going to coach. I was going to come to Calgary with Bob Johnson, one of them. And but people didn't want to take coaching jobs in our country because they were afraid. What if I fail? We're not going to win a gold medal again, probably, or something like that. But anyway, so Dougie says, you got to coach the team, breaking Jimmy in. Art will be there to help Jimmy. I said, no, I don't know that it would be so unfair. I haven't had skates on in 10 years. I said, no, I can't do it. He said, you have to do it or I'll fire you. You work for me. I said, Doug, that's not fair to threaten me like that. He said, Lou, we need you. Got to do it. I said, Art, what kind of team is it going to be? He said, horseshit. We don't even have a goalie. We got Rhodes, but he's with Atlanta, but he's injured. But he's willing to go. And some minor league kid named Robert Esch, he hasn't played in a month. I said, what about who else? I didn't even know some of these players were. And so I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I was reading the Hockey News a half hour later, and there was an article at the time. Yaga was leading the NHL in scoring with Pittsburgh. It was an interview. And in that interview, the reporter said to him, who's the toughest defenseman in the NHL for you to get around? And he said, a guy in Boston, a big guy named Hal Gill. So I remembered that. And when I saw Art and Jimmy a little later, I walked down in Art's office. Jimmy was there and Dougie. And I said, did you guys ever hear of a guy named Hal Gill? And they knew. He said, yeah, he played at Providence. I said, is he American or Canadian? They said, he's US, he's from Boston. I said, put him on the team. I'll coach. That's a true story. And Art said, you don't know him. You've never seen him. I don't have to see him. He said, don't you respect my opinion? I said, Jimmy, did you see him? He said, yeah. Do you think he's good? He said, nah, not that good. Trouble skating. So that's why I talked about free play and all that before, and it'll tie right in now. So I said, put him on the team and I'll coach. Dougie said, put him on the team for those guys. Call him up, see if he wants to come. And he did. But Art said to me, how could you pick a guy you don't know who he is? I said, I had a good scouting report on him. The guy leading the league in scoring, Jaromir Jagr, says he's the toughest D-man to get around. So if he's good enough for Jaromir, he's good enough for me. Put him on the team, and we did. And we had a practice when we landed in Switzerland. I had to put the names of the players in the front and the back of the helmet too. I didn't know who they were. Some of them I knew. And they were an array of third liners and whatever, a couple of good players. And I talked to Hal Gill. I said, Hal, you love playing? He says, I love the game. I love the game. But I have the best partner in the world, Ray Bork. He said, that's my breakout play with the Boston Bruins. Burns, he told me, as soon as you touch the puck, pass it to Bork and get out of the way. And I said, you're going to have to handle the puck here. He said, no way, Lou. I said, yes, you can. Look at me. I'm old, I'm fat. I can still handle the puck. You can too. He said, how do you want us to play against the, what do they call that? The modern way of forechecking was big. The Swedes invented it or presented it. I can't think of the term. The something.
Torpedo?
What?
Torpedo.
No. Torpedo was Tarasov. They stole that, the Swedes. That was Kulagin and Tarasov. And I know the players that were on it happened in the 60s. They didn't tell the truth. They didn't give credit where they should have. But anyway, getting back to Hal Gill says, how do you want us to come out? I said, whoever gets back and look, I'm not going to coach you guys like that. You've played your whole life hockey for an array of wonderful people, wonderful coaches. You know how to play in your own end. You know how to play hockey. You know how to skate, stick handle. If you make a system so strict that the opponent sees it, they can then defend against it or take advantage of it. Just play hard. What you do is pick up the puck in our end, don't go behind the net, and don't ever stop. Attack the first forechecker and beat them. And once you do that, you got a 5-on-4, and use the width of the ice as well as the length. Crisscross, get open, put your stick on the ice and call for a pass that way. Don't even yell for a pass because you're telegraphing it to the defensive team, defensive players. And I said, and we'll be fine. He got very nervous and he said, Coach, what if I turn it over? I said, look over here what we got. 3 goalies. What do we bring them for? They love action. They want to make saves. Where does it say in any hockey book the goalie shouldn't have to make a save or a tough save? Boys, don't be afraid of these people. Play. We walked on the moon. We can play hockey. Play. Don't be afraid. And have confidence in yourself. I'll never criticize any of you for a mistake, but I will if you don't play hard. In fact, put your passport in your hockey pants, because if you don't give 100% every shift, look across this ice. These are your teammates. That's who you're playing for and with. And if you don't give 100%, then you're in trouble. If you make mistakes, you got erasers on pencils. Don't worry about it. Do fine. And Hal Gill blossomed in that tournament. He blossomed. And he got so much confidence. And, Yogi Berra, because I was with the Devils, Yogi used to come over, work out with the owner, John McMullen. Then we'd go in the hot tub and talk. And I said to Yogi, I said, what was the key to your great baseball career, Yogi? What was it? He said, confidence. He said, Lou, this is what he actually said this. He said, Lou, 95% of the game is confidence. The other 50% is ability. And he was a beauty. And anyway, Joe, this team had so much fun. We beat great teams. We had a great team, but we didn't have a lot of great players. Robert Esch, I was eating a pizza and having a beer in the hotel there. He was a table over, and I heard him talking. We had tied Switzerland 3-3, and we had Russia the next day. And that was their best team they had in years. Yashin, Bure, Gasparidis, Jamnad, all Finagimov. They had some team. And they expected to win that tournament at home, kill everybody. And I heard him talking, and he said to the guys, what do you think of that Russian team? They had just beaten France 6-0. French can play. The French are good. And they said, did you see any of it, Eshy? He said, yeah. I didn't think they were that good. And I was sitting there and I said, good. He hadn't played in 5-6 weeks and he wanted to go home. That same morning, he told me his grandfather died and he wanted to go home. He was depressed. I said, okay, I'll go get Jimmy and Art. And the truth of the matter is, a good thing I said to him, well, when did that happen? Yesterday? He said, no, 3 years ago. I said, you're not going anywhere. And then we're sitting there eating, and I said to him, Eshy, you don't think those Russians are that good? He says, yeah, they're all right. I said, well, good, because you're playing tomorrow, and you're going to be great. You're going to be great. He had 5 days growth, looked fat, walked in a stooped way, acted depressed. That night I'm in the lobby of the hotel. I see this tall, handsome young man, all slick back hair, shaved, walking. Who the hell is that with a USA jacket? I look at him. I said, is that US? He says, yes, coach. I said, but he had a game face on. I said, where are you going? For a walk. Get some fresh air. He was focused. Next day, he made 42 saves. Kamensky, these guys are good. He shut them out 3-0. And I'm telling you about coaching, how you treat people and being positive doesn't always work. I think it's a lot better and you have happy dressing rooms and people looking forward to the next practice or the next game. You got to respect the players. And that was a direct result of me having my own children. I learned a lot that way. I think I think the mental aspect is very important. And you don't have to play games with them and all this stuff. They're not dummies. These are smart people. Like I always said, these players can play better than I can coach, and I trust them. And Tarasov used to say that to me, trust your players. Don't pick them for the team if you don't trust them. And when you have them, play them. That's the joy of playing, is playing. And those things are good advice. Mike, is that all right? Enough?
That's great. Yeah, it's all
That's
good.
all.
I mean,
Call them up.
you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that really struck me listening to you speak at all these, level 5 symposiums and all the conferences with the USA Hockey side of things is just the way, you would speak to the youth coaches, about, listen, if you're going to pick a kid on your team, then he's got to play. Or, if you're going to put a player on your team, your obligation as a coach is to make sure that they're playing, not that they're finding a way to sit them.
Like Wally said, we're helping people become better citizens and better people. That's darn important. A tiny fraction will make a career out of the sport, but these people will come back and coach their kids and somebody else's kids. And I've always said, if you treat every boy and girl you coach as if that was your son or daughter, you will rarely make a mistake. And if that isn't tough enough talk for some people, too bad. That's what I believe. And that's what I did. And I saw it work with grown men. Halpern, Connor Walchuk, terrific. And they played great. We only lost one game, the crossover, and we lost on a tough break to Slovakia. Shatan got a puck off the back of the wall, just came out on the stick, and they ended up winning the silver medal. We could have been there. And it wasn't it was a great team, but it wasn't a great bunch of names. And I wouldn't send anybody home. When I went over, coached those national teams, I told the players, only way you get home is poor discipline or an injury. Then you're out. You got to go home. But you're not going to be replaced by better players who get eliminated from the playoffs. When we get on the plane, going over there, this is our team. Win, lose, or draw. That was it. And if that's what you wanted me to say, I mean, that's the truth, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Oh, you're on mute, Wally.
Yeah. I just wanted to say to both you and Lou, thank you very much, Lou, for that story. Tim, we've used the term, a coach's job is to transmit belief at any age. And I think you've told a story at the World Hockey level that we talk to minor hockey people, and all they do is shorten the bench. It's the poorest excuse for coaching. And kids quit at 13 and 14 because they don't get to play, they don't get to have fun, they get yelled at. So that's part of the ethical piece of coaching that we're missing, probably more important than the X's and O's, which you took players who weren't respected for their technical skills and their X's and O's and team playability, but you made them a team and made them compete. So transmitting belief is a term we've used, and we advocate for. That's the coach's job at minor hockey or at pro. You want to keep your job, transmit belief, you have a better chance of success. So outstanding, Lou. Tim, anything to share?
No, just listening and enjoying. Just way back there, you're talking about Herb Brooks, Lou. You obviously had made quite an impression on him because he certainly went on to adopt the type of hockey that you so passionately embrace, and I think all of us do. I had the great pleasure of playing for him in New York one year, and it was like a breath of fresh air.
Well, he could have been the governor of Minnesota, the president of the U.S. I worked with him in Lake Placid. He brought me in as advanced scout, and he gave me a walkie-talkie to the bench to Craig Patrick. in those Olympic Games, and we met after each period, every evening and every morning. And he was, as you played for him, you know, he's a great coach. And then I went with him again in Salt Lake City. And in fact, I just got a card from his wife, Patty, Christmas card the other day. I'll call her this maybe tomorrow. And I got to tell you real quick about her. Anyway, when he died, which was horrible, in an unnecessary death. He didn't have a seatbelt on. He got thrown out of the car. He wasn't drunk, wasn't a big drinker. And the car crushed him. And I was a pallbearer and at his funeral. And it's one of the most saddest wastes of a good life. He really was supportive of me very, very much. But anyway, Patty had remarried to a high school guy back in Yankton, South or North Dakota, wherever it is. And I told her, I said, Patty, this is, 5 years after Herb was dead. I said, I ran into her and I said, I wish I would have known you were available. I didn't know you'd remarry again. I said, I always thought you were cute. She said, you know that, Lou, and she pinched my cheek. She said, you should have asked me. I said, I followed your husband once. It didn't work out that good. I'm not taking another shot at it. But yeah, Herb became confident after the Olympics. And of course we had, and I'll tell this to anybody, we had a great team. And I'm going to tell you something else that a lot of people don't know. We might not have won that gold medal. There was a team in those Olympics we couldn't beat. And that team was Canada. We had, I went up to Hibbing and watched them play at the Hippodrome thing, whatever they call that rink. And we got spanked 6-2. And after the game, Herb came out. He was so pissed off and angry. He said, I don't think we're going to have much success with Canada. He says, they're a confident bunch. And our guys are still made up of college and high school guys that haven't suffered as much as Canadian junior players and some of the college kids, in fact. And he said, I'm concerned. And I need a defenseman besides Morrow who can lug the puck out of the zone. And I was standing there, and David Christian's uncle, a former Olympian, Skinny Christian is his name. He's dead now. He's a great guy. And his wife could make blueberry pie with wild blueberries up in War Road. And we're sitting there. I'm standing there watching this conversation, and Lefty Curran, who I just saw, he was our goalie in '72 Olympics in Sapporo. We won a silver medal that year. Lefty was there, and Herb said, I don't know what to do. And Skinny said, why don't you put David? See, we had centermen, Neil Brandt, Mark Pavlich. These were the greatest American centers we ever had up until that time. Mark Johnson. They don't get better than that. So Christian was like a fourth centerman, but could play. Could he play? We had Mark Wells, who could play a role as a fourth centerman. And David didn't get a lot of ice time, and he was a great player, talented. So Skinny said, why don't you put David back on defense? He'll get the puck out. He said, well, he's a forward. He said, Herb, he played at War Road High School the entire game. He would play defense, he'd play forward, and when he got tired, he moved back to defense. And if we would have needed another goalie, he would have been the guy to go in the nets. Said he's a hell of a player, give him a shot. Next game, Herb put him back on D. And I believe that was the key move in the Olympics, because we didn't have any problem, much of a problem, getting the puck out. And he was so talented offensively also. You guys know that. Saw him play in Winnipeg and all over the NHL. No one ever talks about that. But that was a key element of us winning that championship. And Canada almost beat Finland. No, almost beat Russia, because I was sitting behind the bench. I was scouting the game, and I got a close-up. I was behind the Soviet bench, and I saw Fetisov and Mikhailov get into it, rough each other over something. And Canada just got beat. I mean, they had great players, the Soviets, but just beat that team. That was a good hockey team. With Claire Drake and who were the other kids? Those guys were good. They did a hell of a job. And Brooks was relieved that we didn't have to play him, and so was I.
George Kingston, who's living down in the States now with his wife Wendy, he was one of the coaches on the team,
Yes.
and they had another coach that had played pro and was coaching major junior in Regina at the time, and he was the common sense guy of the group. George tells the story quite often of the goal they gave up on almost an ice puck that resulted in the inability to play you guys anymore after that. But what a remarkable story about Christian going back on defense. And that wasn't big ice. In big ice, forwards can go back on defense because they can skate, create more time and space, and use their skills. So, a real outstanding inside story. And I'm definitely going to edit that. I'm editing that one for us old guys who remember the day and watch the actual game live. And everybody else can watch Miracle on Ice, but it's good to have seen the game live and watch Miracle on Ice. And over the years, being at Salt Lake City, Lou, they had that particular team light the torch at the ceremonies. And I got to know Mark Johnson quite well. And he told me many stories of his NHL experiences and Olympic experiences. He gave me a tour of Lake Placid when we were competing at U18 competitions, Canada, USA, and had many great conversations with him. As well with Bob Johnson coaching the Flames. I coached a major junior hockey at the same time as Bob was coaching, and we would often have chats. We're amazing. So he's highly respected in Calgary, and I'm really glad that you got involved in the game. But your name, you mentioned the 70s, the mid 70s, and the starting of the model, and your involvement. And that was the same time period, 1972, when I stopped playing for Father Bauer. And I played a year of pro, but got back into teaching. And that's when Dave King, after playing with Father Bauer, Dave King got involved in the program of excellence. And the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association became Hockey Canada, and all the curriculum and materials were starting to be written. And I would like to think that it's changed the game and the way the game's played and coached. And you guys have done a heck of a job down there, but I think the pitfalls, we're dealing with the same difficulties, the perspective of the sport, and hopefully we can continue to, in our time, influence these young bucks like Mike and others that will listen to this later on to keep making a difference. So thanks very much for everything. And
you're welcome. It was an honor being with all of you. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome to join anytime. I'm not sure if Daryl Belfry's stay on. I think he is, but Daryl's, I can't believe he's referred to himself as.
Yes, I definitely am on. I haven't missed a word. I've been working and listening the whole time. I'm not going to miss these types of discussions at all.
Daryl, you said you consider yourself elderly in your field. I wonder, where did that come from?
I don't know of a single elite skill coach over 50 years old that is working with best people in the world. I just don't know of any, and I don't expect that I'll be any different. I think that I have to transition in my career, and it's coming up very shortly, almost too fast. And I'll be, hopefully, someone will care about stories that I have to say as much as I revere the ones that you guys have.
Daryl, we'll have to check Thomas's passport, see how old he is, birth certificate.
Thomas is a coach. That's different.
Yeah, well, he's would consider himself he's a coach once again after being a skills coach for many years.
You could argue that Tom
Mhm.
has transitioned his career into something that has more length of projection
Mhm.
than slogging it out on the ice. It just doesn't have a lot of long-term value. It's a young person's game, and I am no longer young.
Lou and Mike, I don't know if you've ever heard of Thomas Pacina, but he came over from the Czech Republic years ago when I was involved coaching the Olympic program, the University of Calgary, for the female team. We didn't have players, we had prospects. And Thomas came over and coached with me for a year. And when I got involved with centralization and our senior women, Tim and Thomas took over that team. Thomas, he worked with Bukac in the Czech Republic. He was from there, and he brought his expertise and knowledge, fluent in German, English, and Czech, and he brought a lot to our game. And he's unable to stay involved in the Canadian female program. He's gone over to the Czech Republic to coach and I believe qualify for the Olympics. And I believe he's got an opportunity to be in the top 3 with that Czech women's team. He's doing very progressive things. So if you want to watch any female hockey, watch that team play because they're taking the game to another level. I think a level that Daryl would really understand and appreciate with what he's hoping NHL teams could even do. But it's interesting the progress that's going on in the game, and I know where Daryl's coming from and the work he's trying to do. And Thomas is definitely in the right place at the right time, being able to do new things, experimental things that are really having outstanding success. So, anything?
I'm gonna have to leave because I gotta drive Brandon to the airport. I don't have a computer. He did all this at his house. Thank you, Brandon. But he's got to go to a hockey event in Phoenix. Can you imagine that, hockey in Phoenix?
Mm.
And,
Could I just interject here for a sec?
yeah,
Like Lou, I don't know if you heard Bob Peters just passed away a few days ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just got an email from the club yesterday. So I just thought I'd let you know that.
What a good guy.
He's a great guy.
Great guy. Great guy. Sorry to hear that. Thank you for telling me. Well, we died. I mean, every one of us.
Yeah, he's 84.
Just a matter of time. He was 84, so that's a decent life.
Yeah.
I'm happy right now. If I die, I die. You know, I live long enough. I'm grateful. I just hope, I was almost dead. I was on the table a couple of months ago. I never went to the hospital. I had to go to the emergency and I was dying. They just saved me within seconds. My bladder was ready to burst, the prostate deal. Bladder was blown up. I had blockage. And I remember I'm laying on the table, holding on because it was painful as hell. And I say, God, thank you. 76 years is good. Thank you very much. If you're ready, I'm ready. I just want to remind you, 2 months ago, I donated $150 to Mother Teresa. So why not, right? That's a Brooklyn move. And I made it. So here I am, aggravating and tormenting for another little while. I got to run. You guys are great. You're welcome. What you do for hockey and people is wonderful. And Wally, and feel proud, all of you, feel proud of your careers and everything you've done and still will do.
Thanks for coming on, Lou.
Take care, Lou. Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
$150 investment.
No doubt. That's great. Well,
Mike.
thanks, guys. Thanks for having him on. He's like I said, I think, and Daryl, Daryl, if you're still on, you just anytime you want to call Lou, he'll talk for hours and hours. So if you ever want to get insight, I think we're actually going to do a little road show with Lou on the East Coast, starting in Pittsburgh and heading up to Buffalo. So back in March. So I think like I said, he holds a room, and the stories are basically endless. And it's every time you get on, you get to hear some nuggets. I think it's great. But thank you guys for having him.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, and he didn't say anything bad about the Canadians, so that was pretty good. I guess he got ahead of the game.
I got to run as well, guys. Daryl, great to hear you again, and Mike, thanks for coming on, and really thanks for getting Lou on. That was terrific.
Yeah, no, thank you guys, and have a great day. Enjoy,
Yeah.
and we're on next week, right?
Yeah, I'll see you guys next week.
Next week is what number? Because my daughter youngest daughter is planning Christmas without my former wife, and she's got every living minute planned. So I'm hoping to join, but I'm not sure about that one. And on the 30th, Mike, we are going to have Billy Bridges, who's the goaltender for a Canadian sledge hockey team, and Ken Babby, who coaches the team.
Yeah, I have that on. I saved that on the calendar already, so that's great.
Okay, so see you on the 30th, and hopefully everything's all right for everybody for Christmas. Take care. Bless you all. Thanks, Daryl. Thanks, Jordan. You're still on with us, so I don't know. I just might stay on for a while to catch up with you on some things. So, Mike, thanks very much.
Is
Jordan, are you on?
Oh, like
Okay,
his mic went off.
there he is.
how about now?
Jordan, what you got anything to share from the takeaways from today's chat?
Well, there's lots of takeaways on it. Some really interesting stories and stuff like that. But I was going to chat with Daryl for a quick second and give him an update on something that I stole from him. I'm just
Daryl,
in the
you
car.
all
Well,
set?
I'm just in the car, so I wasn't sure whether you can still hear me, Wally.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
Daryl, he's
so
been experimenting with the video we put together when you were in town, and it appears to be catching on with his hockey team. Go ahead, Jordan.
with the U18 AA girls that I'm working with, Daryl, I took that video that you had and drew up a couple of the drills that you were doing, that neutral zone surf angle, and then the one in the offensive zone with the D coming down and trying to dissuade the pass, but then taking that angle and angling them off on the boards and jumping off the boards with the puck. And I thought that the team that I have is one that, well, I think any team should be using it now that I've seen it in action and used it. Your description of it was so good that it allowed me to think about it. And I had to think about it for a while because I think it's pretty forward thinking, Daryl. But once I started wrapping my head around it and saw the kids using it just in practice, started going, okay, so why would you ever have a D pinch down the boards the way they used to traditionally and turn their butt to the boards, and if the puck gets by them, their toe caps are pointing the wrong direction and the other person has a step to get around them. Whereas with that other surf angle type of angle, your toe caps are ahead of the boards or heading up ice where the puck could have squirted by, and you have body position. So worked with the girls on it for now. Last night was probably the fourth practice that we used it in, and last night it was all questions with them now, saying things like, how do you feel about where you are positionally to the player who had the puck, and asking the D if they can now see when they're defending that way, how many offensive opportunities are you getting out of that rather than it being a defensive positioning? And the kids are just getting it, and I think that it's going to translate into gameplay here really quickly. It already has. In our games last weekend, there were some of our players that were saying, "Did you see that angle I took?" And we'd be like, "Yeah." And I said, "Did you come away with the puck?" And they're like, "Yeah." And so it's the transmitting belief out of that, Daryl. I just wanted to thank you for putting that together, and because I do see that as a progression in the game that is only going to help it. And those traditional things that we do just because we have always done them that way, if no one asks the question of why do we do that way, it never progresses. So thank you for that. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been eye-opening for me.
Daryl, I'm really curious about Daryl's idea of working at the level he has and what he's doing now with the Leafs, the Marlies, and how things are working out with the role Haley plays and Danielle Goyette plays. So I got my hoodie on today, Daryl. So thanks for having me come out there and spend time with you and the Leafs. It was a real blessing. So I'm ready to sign off here. Wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And Tim Bothwell accidentally booked tickets for the 3rd, which he's purchased. That trip is to Edmonton to watch. The game is actually Canada USA women in Edmonton. On the 6th, he's going to purchase tickets for Red Deer. So he may be looking for people to join us. Barb cannot go to Red Deer on the 6th. She has work commitments, but he's purchased 4 tickets. So we may be looking to fill 2 more seats. And if you can look at your schedule and consider joining us, Jordan as well. Be sure nice to have a good hockey chat on the way up and back and watch the women play. So, okay, I've got to sign off, everyone. Great talking to all of you today. And Tom, have you got ice time today?
No, today's my non-ice time. Well, I got my girls practice, my college team. There's only about 5 still in town.
Yeah.
So I think I'll just go skate with them.
Okay.
On my new skates.
Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Wally.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Jordan, Daryl, take care.
Yeah, see you.
Bye-bye.
And Daryl, about being an old guy, I might be the oldest college coach at 74. So who's to know, eh?